Hi, so today I'm going to be sharing with you the progress my artwork has made over the years. I've gone through all my art folders and I've kind of pulled out some artwork I want to look back on and discuss with you what I learned when I first started, all the way back in, goodness me, 2010. And what I'll be doing, as I said previously, is I'll be picking out at least 2 illustrations as we go along, and I will be redrawing them in my current art style, which I think is good. I'm actually really looking forward to it. It's been a lot of fun going through all these folders that I've lovingly kept for over 15 years. And seeing like the journey. It's great, and it's so lovely that I get to share it with you. So without further ado, we're going to start off, and I'm so glad I've kept this after all these years. The very first manga drawing, cartoon drawing I did. Look at this. This is a time capsule, my god. So as you can see here, what we've got here is a combination of different tutorials I learned from a book I got in my secondary school library. It was literally called How to Draw Manga. I can still picture the cover to this day, and I think I should have just purchased this book because I renewed my subscription for it so often. I don't think anyone else really got a chance to look at it because I absolutely adored it. Because prior to secondary school, I had no idea what manga or comics really were. I always associated it with like Superman and Batman, and it was like a boy thing. And suddenly you had all these like magical girls and like fantasy and epic adventures with girl leads. And I was like, oh my god, what? Where's this been my whole life? On the side here on the left is my attempt of applying what I've learned to make my own original character. And one of the things I absolutely loved about manga, which I had never seen before, was how your characters could have colored hair. And this blew my mind. I had never seen, I think one of the first animes I watched was Mew Mew. And I was really influenced by like the pink, this particular tutorial. I was like, oh my god, I need to have a girl with pink hair. And that then evolved because prior to this, I did write short stories without illustrations. A few illustrations, actually, now that I think about it. I should probably find those as well. So basically, I had a history prior to discovering manga. In my later, I think the last year of primary school, I discovered I love telling stories. And then immediately, almost immediately, discovering manga immediately afterwards, I was like, oh my god, I didn't know comics were a thing that, could appeal to girls as well. So I was like, well, I'm going to give that a go. And that's what brings us to this character being evolved to this lovely lady here and her best friend. And I unfortunately didn't keep the entire... I don't know what I've done with it. I honest to God had this like in a folder, and it was like it was all chunky, and I was like, oh, that's got to be it, because there was loads of pages of it. But no, it's just the front cover. Well, I say front cover, like the first page. Is it double-sided? Oh, it is double-sided. But yes, there was more than this, but this is the first page. But I love how you could still see I'm trying to get the guidelines in to get the proportions right, and I'm experimenting with different camera angles and the speech bubbles, and then on the other side we got the next part. And I gave her a cat. This is meant to be a cat. It's just so sweet. It just makes me smile so much. I definitely will be redrawing her. Maybe I'll redraw the very first one. I think that would be really sweet. But maybe go with her hairstyle, because I kind of went for like a curly hair at the beginning, but she ended up just having like a straight middle parting sort of bob. But that is the first installment. This is where my art and manga and comics journey started, all the way back in 2010, 2011. Sorry, stand corrected, 2010. This started in 2010. So I did have, I'm missing like 3 different like nearly finished comics, but this is the second volume of a comic I did, and pretty much immediately after I did the first ones. This is where you'll recognize this chappie. It's Blue, who is one of the characters that has remained. He is quite literally blue, but he's gone through a wardrobe change, a haircut, so he might not be completely recognizable here, but there's some remnants there and dragon there. not quite looking how he does at the end, but that's all a part of like learning and stuff, and it's just so sweet. And just like I just remember I have such fond memories of like being in my form group and just having, instead of reading, because I didn't like reading with my dyslexia, but this way it was like another creative output I could have, escape into my own little world. And then I'd always have my friends or like people in my form that'd be like, oh, Chloe, have you done the next page? Can we read it? And it was just so much fun, and it brought me so much joy. And it's so lovely to know that after all these years, it's still something that I get to do and have fun with, and I still get the same amount of enjoyment from it. And that brings us to 2012. So this is a year after that comic you've just seen. And this is, I think, around about the time I entered my goth phase. If it wasn't completely obvious. I love Tim Burton and dark fantasy, and I discovered some dark fantasy manga and anime, and I was reading a lot of those. I remember my mum really liking this one, and I think it's because it was the first time as well I experimented with like mixed media. So this is like some wallpaper, and like I wanted to do some like Tim Burton inspired swirls. This is also around about the time I discovered Nightcore. It was around about the time I got my first YouTube account and discovered what Nightcore was. It'd just be pitched edited music, and it was like the best thing ever. It was great. But yeah, I love this one so much. I'm humming and hawing about redrawing this one as well, just because it was so memorable. Like, I knew I still had this, but we'll see. Okay, and next up, so my art took a different style approach. I want to say this is around 2012, 2013, because it's still got the same characters. And essentially this is what my art style looked like before I discovered what manga was. And so for a little period of time, I kind of jumped back to this sort of, I don't know, almost Tintin looking style. I feel like you can almost see a little bit of like Tim Burton kind of creeping its way in there, very slender, tall forms. But yeah, I wanted to experiment a bit with combining styles, so almost combining what I'd learned with like doing like the skeletal, like all the prep work and the folds of clothes and things like that, and combining it with what I had done beforehand, and just to see what that would come out like. And yeah, I think that's really, I don't think I've drawn in this style for quite some time. I don't know what it would look like now. And then that brings us to 2013, and I had discovered the beautiful world of pro markers. My god, this was a game changer. I remember getting my first set at my first ever Comic-Con I went to in London with my friend and her mum, and because her older sister was into manga and comics and drawing, and she introduced them to me. And the idea that you could color and make something look printed, but you've done it by hand, was just mind-blowing. It really elevated the drawing to like a whole new level, because prior to that, everything was in pencil, which is what will bring us to our first folder. And you'll see what I mean when I refer to going from pencil to the pro markers. There is a huge difference. So this comic is the next generation of what this one was. So you see we've got like the reoccurring characters there, and you'll see blue cropping up a fair bit as well. So here I've just zoomed out a bit so you can see it's A4 size, but you'll see what I mean with everything's in pencil. And I got my first pack of like fine liners, so I was experimenting with like I think 3 different sizes at the time, and I got some colored fine liners as well. They weren't as good. This is blue. Popping up again. Oh, this is a early version of Dragon and an early version of Star. Yeah, because there is a lot. And what I love as well, like something I've always enjoyed doing, is creating very visually interesting backgrounds. So in blues, and this is something I've kept for his current room design. This is spiral staircase. I just love the idea of a spiral staircase for some reason. I don't know, it just seemed very whimsical because you don't see them too often. And I was like, oh, well, I can do whatever I want. So he's having a spiral staircase. And once I finished this comic, it was at this point where as I said before, I found out what pro markers were. And of course, I naturally wanted to experiment with those. So I rewrote the story a fourth time, but in pro markers. And I loved the front cover so much, I kept it the exact same. But you can just see the difference these pens make. It's absolutely mind-boggling. Start to experiment with vehicles in this version as well. Oh, and I love this page. I love it so much. This is like my first time trying to create a bird's eye dynamic, like they're falling through the floor. And again, so this is what I was saying about how it's the same story, but it's been rewritten. And there's some key aspects that have stayed. So beforehand, Blue's room, where was it? Yeah, so you can see I've kept the bookshelves. There's not as many, because another thing I discovered with pro markers was how much quicker it was to actually colour with them as opposed to interchanging pencils. I would just get like my red pen and I go red, 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 and then green, 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 like that. And instead of having to sit for ages, like scratching and colouring away at like the carpet colour, you get a thin pen nib, and then you get the wider one, like the brush one. And so I could like fill this in like in a matter of seconds, and it was brilliant. Oh, and again, doing like experimenting with fabric. I really love drawing fabric, and I think that stems from my love for sewing as well. And I can't remember what year this was, but I wrote this story, I think, in the last year of secondary, going into my 2 years of college. But this is a story called The Snow. It was completely different from anything I had ever done before. I really wanted to experiment with like snowy scenery and like high school drama, and like kind of go back to where I started with focusing on just a couple characters as opposed to like a huge cast. Just really experiment with layouts and stories, and just all very experimental. I went through the phase. I did not want to draw the other eye. I was that person. Everyone, every single character, every single character had to have a fringe because I did not want to draw the other eye. And now I've kind of gone to the other end of that spectrum where I'm like, no, everybody can see everybody's face. Like, there's no hiding anything. There's not a side fringe in sight. So this was sort of like a fantasy rom-com I tried writing, and I did over 100 pages. Like, again, hang on, let's see if I can hold all of it. There's a lot. And I never actually finished this one. This is one of the ones where life just happened, you know? But unlike my others, this was the first one that I posted online. So back in the days of DeviantArt, I don't even know if that site still exists. And also as well, because I hadn't written a romance before, I wasn't really sure how to pace things. Because if you were to read this from start to finish now, you'd be like, my God, the pacing is like... But you got to think, it would take me a good week. I'd do 3 pages in a week. So to me, the plot was going very, very, very slowly. And if you were reading it week by week as I was posting, then it was going very, very slowly as well. But if you were to just pick it up straight off the bat, you'd be like, my God, they've just met. What are they doing? So we've had folder 1, folder 2, and then nothing. That's right. For about 5 years, I didn't do any comics, any writing, any drawing, because I had started uni. So I did my degree, which finished in a very magical year we are all very fond of and know very well at this point, 2020. And it was the most mentally draining and exhausting time creatively I think I have ever been in. And I was thinking to myself about the stories I used to write and how none of them ever got finished, and I had had ideas since then. And I thought to myself, well, I've got nothing else to do. Why don't we pick it up? And that's what I did. And this is where this little notebook from the works for £1 came in. And this is one of the first sketchbooks I have ever completely finished. And this is also where you will see and hopefully recognize where the original 4 characters for my story and Blue, Dragon, Star and Jade start to make their first proper appearance. This is where in these early sketches and drawings, I'm experimenting with what they look like color palettes, like different dynamic ways of laying them out. This is where things started in regards to Unitea. And again, this is where, so I kept it small because I wanted it to be a book that I could take with me everywhere. I still wanted to do pro markers because I wanted to feel like I was making the most out of this sketchbook and still almost like brushing up on my skills basically. So here I'm experimenting with front covers for different volumes, different sort of silhouettes, character ideas, and how the main cast would interact with them. Love this one. And this is something I did actually go on to redraw. And I love this one as well. Little baby mermaid. And his little chubby arms. And this is also where I started to seriously think about not just what the main characters look like, but the background characters. What are these species in the world? What sort of variations do they come in? What do their hairstyles look like? How do they dress? And how each species in the world looks distinctively different from each other, but not so similar so that everyone's a copy and paste of the same face. So there's enough variety, but you can distinguish a witch from a Chidi from an elf from a orc. I thought I was gonna say goblin then. And this is me experimenting with Star and his outfit. His outfit pretty much has stayed the same, to be fair. This is me playing around with maybe giving him a jumper and a t-shirt. But I thought for given his character, so he's from the streets, I thought this was far too smart for him to be introduced as. Could be something he gets evolved into later. Oh, and playing around with memes on Pinterest, how the different characters, facial expressions react. This one it was a meme picture of a cat, and I think it was along the lines of, please draw your OCs like this. And so I've drawn Dragon scared out of his wits over something, and then Blue, Dragon and Star fighting over something. Oh, I love this one. So this is in a abandoned temple in one of the very, very, very later on installments of Unitea. And I just had such a clear image in my head of what it looked like. I was like, oh, I have to draw it. I have to draw this place. And then I loved it so much that I drew the characters interacting it, how they do in the story, and seeing how they are all walking differently. So Jade's kind of leading the group, and Blue is scared out of his wits, Dragon is bored, and then Star's kind of oh, well, what's going on here then? Another thing I started to do towards the later part of this sketchbook was whenever I was drawing characters or something I knew I definitely wanted to use, I started to do them in colored pencil. And as you can tell, comparing to my previous illustrations, there's not an awful lot of skeletal work. There's not a lot of figuring out the anatomy. I wanted to really try and almost force myself to not rely on those guides all the time to get the faces correct. I think this was really helpful. And I use this a little bit on backgrounds as well, so forcing me to think about perspective and scenery and what have you, and it kind of forces you to be a bit more confident with your line work as well, because it's colored pencil. You can't erase it or go over it again. There's no edit undo. You kind of have to stick with it, and if you make a mistake, do you make it work or what have you? And you can see there's some very faint guidelines running through the image to get the basic concept. And then this image later then got turned into a digital image, which if I'm clever, you will see it here. Oh, and this was like creating, and because I enjoyed the creative process of working this sketchbook, I then purchased this one. This is technically a journal that I purchased from Etsy, and as you can see, I haven't finished this one by a long shot because it is my current Unitea related sketchbook. Again, I think this one I started in 2021. So this is where things are going to start to look a lot more recent because, as I said, this is a sketchbook that I still use. I haven't used it in some time, but this is where my artwork is going to start to look more where it is currently. But I started this sketchbook in 2021, and it was just more of a just playing around, not kind of making any specific artwork, just keeping it related to the story. So here we have Jade's golden tea set, which I absolutely love. If one day I could find a way to have this in my possession, that would be amazing. This is where I did the original sketch. This is our family dog, Cookie. And then I didn't want to risk ruining the pencil work, so I just got some tracing paper and used coloured pencil over the top. I really like working with coloured pencil. I feel like it's almost, I suppose, it's very buildable. This is the word I'm looking for. Here I was doing some practice perspective on a lunch break with Master Quill. So this is another character. She's gone through a lot of different design ideas, different colorations, and I feel like this is the one that I'm kind of sticking with. Here we got just some thumbnails of different characters. So we got what I call the house squad, like the main characters. So you got Jade Star, Dragon Blue, got Master Quill and his wife, got some witches and other side characters they meet along the way. The licking, the frog meets chicken animal hybrid. I love him so much. I love him so much. He's so cute. He doesn't have a name. I think I gave him a name when I included this species as part of an Inktober challenge. But these are essentially Unitea's version of the pigeon or a chicken. They're just a very commonplace bird. And yeah, I feel like it's very visually self-explanatory. What's on the next page? Oh, yes. So here we have where I started to kind of miss having the full page artwork. I wanted to lean more into realism, experimenting with facial expressions and angles, because I feel like it's very easy to get stuck in the sort of like 3/4, half-turned facial expression, which I know this technically is, but it's looking down, and I wanted to put a lot of emotion and detail in like the eyes and the hair again. And I still absolutely love this one. This later got turned into a digital, I digitalized the next 3 images you're gonna see. And again, if I'm clever, you will see it here in comparison. So this is a character called Zofia, kind of like Zoe and Sophia put together. So Zofia, and she's absolutely beautiful. Whenever she is seen, she is teary-eyed, unfortunately. She's a very sad lady. This is Eleanor, and this is what I was saying about going for like very dynamic, like really challenging myself with these facial expressions, experimenting with different materials. So she's got her golden armor and skin tones. I really love exploring and drawing different shades of skin tones. So here there's like underneath here there was like bits of green and purple and pink, and some orange like under her chin here, because Eleanor is very golden, so she's very warm, she's glowing. I wanted that to be perceived in the line work. And then we have Trinity, and this is where I was going for a face-on dynamic lighting approach again. And I still really love this one. I went for a different shading style. I feel digital, it allowed me to really play around with the layering, because like I said, because this is pencil, I had to really commit to what I was doing. Because like I said previously, you can't take it back. Whatever you put down on the paper, it's pretty much there. And I'm so happy with how this turned out. And I love her hat and her outfit. The third eye, how it's like scowling, and oh, I just love it. She's so beautiful. Oh, and here we have the first illustration I did for Natalie from Natalie's Neighbours. Another story I have simultaneously going on, just in case I wasn't already doing enough. But no, I love her. She is kind of like her and Ibit. What I suppose, if I was to compare it to anything, it's almost like if Lilo and Stitch was crossed with Over the Garden Wall. It's very sort of innocent, child-esque with some dark fantasy. So this is sort of like a thumbnail experimenting with what her mum looks like and shapes. I think the art style for this is more leaning towards almost like a Steven Universe, sort of a more softer, not so realistic and serious. Good. Oh, just gone to Comic-Con 2023 and I brought my sketchbook with me and I did these back at the B&B of my friends. This is me practicing similar to the full color illustrations I did earlier. This is me trying to do a realism of like jade, experimenting with exterior like backgrounds and like architecture. Do you remember seeing her? This is the one this is Miss P, but redrawn. Here we go. I've still got the other one. Look at the difference. Isn't that mad? Like, and it's still the same, like that's still her. Like, I love it. I loved the idea. So she is essentially in like fishing gear. So she's in a coastal town. And I really like the idea of like her being in these really large, chunky, oversized overalls with a checkered top or shirt underneath. I think in this version I went for like a knitted jumper, but I felt like there was a lot of knitwear already in some of the other characters. And I love the idea of like just like her hair being kind of just really like scrunched up out the way, like it's untamed hair, and she is so tired. Like she's been through some things, to put it even lightly. But yeah, I absolutely love this one. And I believe that is the end of that sketchbook. And that brings us to current day, where I now do 90% of everything on the computer. But I was thinking as I was going through my work, and I definitely will do that angel illustration, but I think I want to go back to my roots for a little challenge, and I'm going to redraw in my current art style, but using pencils and or pro markers. Let's give it a go. Hi, welcome back. So I am going to be redrawing my very first manga cartoon illustration in my current art style. So I'm going to be paying homage to the original media, and I will be doing a full body illustration in pencils and pens and inks. And I will be doing a time lapse of this one and doing a sort of commentary over the top as we go. I tell you what, it is. Oh, I haven't got the right. There you go. You can see what I'm doing now. That helps, doesn't it? I have not drawn in. God, the curse of being left-handed. Why? Let's try and get her on the page here. So I've not drawn this character. Goodness me, for 15 or so years. What sort of pose do we want her in? I'm kind of just instinctively getting a face down. Do we want her? Maybe do some thumbnails. Oh no, don't hit me with artist block right before I'm about to do something I've been looking forward to do all day. Maybe a hand on the hip. Yeah, we'll do that. Nice hand on the hip kind of pose. But yeah, she's chill. I think I kind of gave her like a, not a sassy attitude, but very like laid back. Ain't nobody gonna tell her what to do. So here I am, just setting out the pose. It took me a while to figure out what to go for, but I just kept it relatively simple and similar to what I did originally. Adding in the clothes, keeping the sort of like the crop top cardigan, flared jeans, adding a necklace because she does have a necklace in the comic, and going for her more straighter hair, as I mentioned. I'm just going straight in with the pencils. I tried to use my normal technique of layering different colours, and it took me a while to get back into the swing of it, but I still enjoyed the process nonetheless. And I later on went over again, adding some more shading and some highlights in some yellow, and there we have it. Got our redrawn challenge. And here I am starting the second redraw challenge, which is the Gothic angel illustration I did in secondary school. So immediately starting off, I wanted to keep the same pose and positioning, but I wasn't entirely sure what to do for the background because it's very abstract and I think it's got its own original charm, but I wasn't too sure if I'd be able to recreate the same vibe, so I was going to update that using my new style as well. Here you can just see I'm constantly going back and forth with ideas, thinking at one point I was like, do I just keep it simple with a circle and maybe some roses at the top? Do I maybe have her looking out of a window? Definitely wanted to keep the violin. I think that was like a nice little touch. At this point I decided I was happy with how the angel looked, so I was going to go ahead and sketch her out and do the line work and figure out what I wanted to do for the background afterwards. I kind of thought to myself, if I had the angel composition how I wanted it to be, then maybe the background would just naturally come afterwards, and I feel like it did eventually. Here I am using some free assets from Clip Studio Paint to get the roses. And the fun part, which is the colouring. I absolutely love the shading on this piece. Like any excuse to do a slight touch of realism, and hair. Oh my goodness. Colouring in hair is one of my favourite things to do. Especially with the shine. I knew I wanted to make the colouring sort of reflect more like a nighttime scene, make it very like moonlit and dreamy, and that was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed colouring in the wings as well. I kind of go for the less detail the better with items like wings and fur. I feel like you can say a lot without doing too much. And here I am finally trying to figure out what I want to do. Do I want to incorporate the swirl design? Do I want it to be a moon? Do I want it to be a window? And I settled for the idea of her kind of sat on this like bed of roses, playing the violin to the moon. And there we have it, our final illustration.